So we're actually going to start. Not bad. So, hi and welcome. My name is Patty Zorn, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm actually I thought I was going to be able to just talk extemporaneously, and you know what? I'm not going to do that. So, I want to welcome all of you, and thank you for coming to the memorial to honor and celebrate, actually, Ro King's incredible life. I know some of you didn't really know Ro, and you're here to lend support to some of her friends and family, which really means a lot. We should all have a program at this point. Is there anybody that you don't have one? Do you have any extra programs?
I'll check.
Okay. Is that everybody else is all set? Okay.
Is the sound volume good? Shall we turn it up a bit? Let me take care of that first.
And I don't want to forget to thank Joyce Habusha for getting the wonderful food and drink that we'll be having at the end. Lucy Slursberg for the absolutely beautiful flower arrangements that we have here at the front and also upstairs. And Jane Preston, yes, for doing all the logistical things in the space. For the first hour, a few of us close to Ro will be sharing what she meant to us. And then Linny is going to introduce each person when it's their turn to speak. We have a mic, even though this room isn't huge, because we want to hear everybody. And some of us who have a hard time hearing, if you don't speak in the mic, then we don't get to hear you. So please, if you can. Okay, so let me begin. I knew Ro for 55 years, starting when I was 19. So there are tons of stories about the ways that Ro is important to me. And since I can't tell all of them, I'm going to focus actually on the beginning, the early years when we met in college. And what I was realizing when I was thinking about this is that I never would have chosen to live in New York City if it hadn't been for her. I just would never have come here. And then my life obviously would have been very different. And there are a lot of people I never would have met. So we were both at Penn State in the early 60s. She arrived with Roberta Zimmerman. Is Roberta here by chance? Anyway, who was okay, so she arrived with Roberta Zimmerman. They were both transfer students in their junior year. I was a returning sophomore. I had just decided to go to nursing school. So I met Ro in the dorm halls. She was riding on a clothes rack, just for the hell of it. Penn State admitted more students than they had room for, knowing that some would drop out. So she and Roberta slept in the study lounge, waiting for an actual dorm room to open up. I remember liking her energy and her humor right away. And she agreed early on to listen to the speeches that I had to prepare for speech class. She enjoyed my first topic, how to make grilled cheese sandwiches with an iron. She encouraged me to be funny and playful. I think I got an A for that topic. At the end of the semester, I remember feeling very sad. Not that I was leaving the school, but that I was leaving a very special newfound friend. Later in our lives, we were both struck by how we maintained our budding friendship over the years and over long distances. We'd only known each other a few months before I left, but we visited each other in our different locations. She, of course, was in New York City. I was in Buffalo, and then Boston, where I was pursuing my nursing degrees. What struck us is that we both felt a connection that allowed us to sense when the other one would make a phone call, and it just kept happening. So we figured it was ESP, and we had it. Now, when I would visit her in New York, a place that I'd always heard was a great place to visit, but not to live, she introduced me to its culture, its buzzing energy, the food, John's Pizza in the Village. Actually, we had her 40th birthday party there, and they allowed us to bring in, you remember that, right, Judy? And we brought in our own champagne. We had a wonderful time. Ro informed me that New York was not a horizontal city, but rather one of verticality. And that's how she said it. It's a vertical city. Okay. She taught me how to pronounce Houston Street, not Houston, which is like the city of Texas. She taught me the importance of walking with eyes down toward the sidewalk so I wouldn't step in dog poop, which in the 70s was a major problem. What struck me early on was that being around Ro's vitality and zest for life was really contagious for me. I'd always been a somewhat subdued child and young adult, believe it or not, and now I found it easier to enjoy and appreciate life. Other essentials that Ro taught me were that an orange light on a traffic signal meant run, that you don't slow down. Okay, she showed me how to walk like a New Yorker with self-assured steps so that people wouldn't mistake me for a tourist and mug me. Seeing New York from the eyes of a quintessential New Yorker, I really began to love the city. So after spending 3.5 years abroad, living as an expatriate, I decided it was time to come back to the States, and so it just made sense for me to come to New York City. Besides, I also got a rent-controlled apartment for $93 a month. That helped, I know. I arrived during the height of the women's movement. She brought me into her community. She and Lynn took me to Alex Stopkin concerts. Also, Roberta Cassidy's group, Women Like Me, I went to that. I learned what it meant to be a radical lesbian feminist. I learned from Ro to be careful about saying I was bisexual, because at that time it was considered to be like rosé wine. Neither here nor there. Things have dramatically changed since then with, gender fluidity, and rosé wine actually is coming to its own as well. Thank goodness. And when I wanted to meet women, Ro arranged to take me to a party where she watched over me like a mother hen to make sure I'd be okay. So the fact is that New York City was never, ever a difficult or an unfriendly city for me, because Ro paved the way and made it less scary in so many ways. And I feel very fortunate, about that. I suspect that what Ro courageously learned and shared these past few years about a way to navigate life and death will also be helpful for me when I need to navigate the next path in my life. Yay. Most dramatic were the losses in death, health, and time. 3 people I loved died. Lynn was diagnosed and treated 2,000 miles away from me for lymphoma. Mireille had 2 surgeries, one with a long, difficult recovery and ambivalent results. The stress and grief accelerated my CLL symptoms, with first a painful gout attack, and then a super enlarged painful spleen, and extreme fatigue. My white blood cells skyrocketed, and I had to undergo chemotherapy. Sounds awful, and it was. These were only the major difficulties. The minor ones went on unrelentingly, requiring time, attention, and exacting its share of me. Yet, as I look back on this past year, I can see it as nothing less than an initiation. Through these struggles, I found a gateway into a new unfolding of my path. It seems that the moment I became an adult, I had a supervalent idea, a quest that has never left me. I wanted to discover my purpose in life. This is not the same as, for example, trying to discover what colors look good on you. For once discovered, you can feel settled, confidently choosing the same colors for decades. Now, the purpose in Life Quest is quite different. You seek, you find, you manifest, and then life poses a new challenge. I did not have to throw out what I had discovered, but had to continually quest for yet another step. Sometimes I wondered why I had embraced Socrates' dictum that an unexamined life is not worth living. So with less work and low energy, I could not pursue my normal life and activities. I did have more time, however, and motivation to examine my life. A life where time was running out. A life where I was aging and living with a disease that would eventually be fatal. Yet a life rich in meaning, fulfillment, and love. I was occupied with how to embrace the paradox of loving my life and knowing I would have to let it all go. In fact, continually, month by month, letting go of loved ones and activities I could no longer do as I approached the ultimate letting go. Well, amazingly, I found a new life as the old one became compromised. I found myself living in what I call apple time. So, okay. My energy dictated much needed rest. I spent hours under the tree watching my apples grow with flowers, from flowers to tiny tight buds, to recognizable green young apples, eventually ripening to red, then mahogany. Red against the yellowing leaves and finally shriveling up and falling to the ground, leaving the tree leafless and bare, naked against the bright blue sky. In apple time, I really noticed the changes, multitudinous within the pacing of the season. I had always gone too fast to see all but what I now realize were the most obvious micro changes. As I slowed down, I began to notice a rich inner life, a slow, sensual life, an intellectually stimulating life, a life lived with defining values. My previous states of loving, gratitude, and appreciation paled by comparison with what I was now experiencing. Perhaps I felt these things so acutely because they weren't distractible, surrounded by the multiple stimuli and change of activity of my regular life. It was the difference between tasting a morsel and eating a meal. I like both modes, of course, but eclipse the one and the other moves amplified into the spotlight. That morsel alone on the fork gets smelled, looked at, bitten slowly, chewed, savored, in full attentiveness, as no other forkful of a complete meal would ever be experienced. That sounds so wrong. I felt that I was living richly within a new dimension, which was side by side with my usual dimension. The changes were subtle, and perhaps people who didn't see me daily wouldn't have noticed a thing. In fact, I did all the things I always did, just slower and less. I managed to cultivate a vegetable garden, and when the time came, canned variety of sauces and chutneys. I had a social life, much diminished, but kept contact with close friends. I didn't miss an hour of work. True to the magic that appears to guide my practice, people suddenly had commitments out of state, or they were ready to switch to less frequent meetings. I had less work, but did it well. I wrote 2 living eulogy helix letters, which requires a great expenditure of energy. Generally, I lived my life with most of my changes going on internally. I took Sandy Ingerman's soul retrieval 5-day training, and somehow all my shamanic study came together. Almost seamlessly, an integration of shamanism and psychotherapy blended with the work I love to do. I think it is because I spent so much time living in apple time that the veil thinned and became accessible to me on a daily basis. It's the same watching the sunset or the sparkly lights beckoning as the sun plays over the crystal white snow. It is the consciousness that my dogs and people I love are only with me for a moment, and I don't take a second for granted. I touch what I love with a sense that I am participating in a miracle. The description of these subtle differences is hard to put in words. Even harder is maintaining the state. It is as slippery and elusive as the correct descriptive words. I keep slipping from this luminous dimension that I found into the feelings about everything I've lost. The fall is easily to describe. The best words are cranky, grumpy, and discouraged. When I dwell on worry, loss, and fear, my found dimension appears as a wispy dream. I think I am rationalizing, compensating, being an incurable optimist. I'm just an old, sick person whose friends are dying, imagining that I found something wonderful, an illusion, so I can cope. Then I think about my continual quest to find and refine my purpose in life. I question whether I have fulfilled my destiny. Do I have any regrets? If time is running out, is there anything I need to do or say? Do I see the next part of my path unfolding before me, and is it authentic? I examine my life and I have no regrets. It took who I was and where I have been to make me who I am, and I'm pleased. I do not want to change a thing. My losses have helped me fine-tune my life. As a practice, I relook at the people and activities that fill my life. I say what needs to be said and keep up to date with expressions of love and appreciation. Thank you, Socrates. I have examined my life, and it is well worth living.
That was beautiful. I love how you read that, Patty. Mide is also going to read something from Ro's writings in a little bit. I'm Lynn Preston, and this is an amazing day, sort of hanging on the brink between time and timelessness. A day that's wonderful to see everybody, and a day that's also unbearable for some of us. But it helps so much to have caring and community and togetherness. And I'm so happy to see all of you. I also was going to speak extemporaneously, and time got away there. Mide asked me to talk about Ro's wild side. Wasn't represented enough in the Santa Fe crowd. It was her New York side. I most wanted to tell you about what I learned from Ro, because our 50 year now, not 55, Patty, you beat me by 5 years. Our 50-year anniversary will be this summer. Our 50-year relationship was one of learning and teaching each other and sharing and exploring together. And so I thought that would be what I would most want to share. But then when I thought about Mide saying I should bring up the wild side, I thought, well, loving Ro, especially in those early days, was always taking a walk on the wild side. Absolutely. And I learned a lot. Ro loved unconventionality, and she was drawn to me when we were 26 because I was unconventional par excellence for her. She thought I would do anything. But little did she know, I didn't even have a clue about the conventions, the Jewish middle class conventions that she was rebelling against. You know, like you empty the waste paper baskets before you have company and then you serve a cocktail or wine. I didn't know about things like that. And she was very charmed by what she thought was my thumbing my nose at conventions. So I learned to be wild from Ro. It was a wild time of history in the 60s and 70s. We grew each other up, reaching playfully for the wings of the leading edge of the new age that we felt was our birthright and our calling. Experimenting with all the new freedoms of sexuality, consciousness raising. Some of you guys know about all of this. Consciousness expanding drugs, exuberant group dancing, naked encounter groups, new forms of community, communication, and living. Protest marches, and working out the complexities and challenges of non-monogamy and bisexuality. The wildness was not only bursting out of constraints of social constrictions and behavior, but more importantly, Ro taught me to cherish the unconventional out-of-the-box, original thinking, which leads me to the next point. The second thing that I learned from Roe was about creative dialogue, playing with ideas, examining life. As Patty read, the unexamined life is not worth living. So we spent a lot of time examining life so that it wouldn't be not worth living. So it should be worth a lot, for all these years. On our very first date, after my inviting Roe to my existentialism class, we went to dinner, a little Italian restaurant in the neighborhood, and I popped the question. I said to her, "What is your philosophy of life?" She answered something about how guilt would really inform you of your true values, and I didn't take to that very well. The Jewish guilt part wasn't part of my culture. But I was intrigued with her philosophy of what she called creative selfishness. She said that if you nourish yourself and you put yourself first and you take care of yourself, you'll have more to give the world, you'll be more creative, and you will make more of a difference in the world. And I loved that. It was very radical for me at that time, coming from a dedicated Christian background where we were taught that the Christian's goal was not the tawdry, ephemeral goal of personal happiness. So your own personal happiness wasn't supposed to count. So I was very intrigued with this. And thinking about it, it reminds me of a quote from Parker Palmer that I often think of when he said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what brings you alive, because the world needs truly alive people." And that very much was Roe's philosophy. Roe's dissertation in those days was about the double helix of consciousness, the idea that the spirals of progress and the spirals of regress were one unity. This theme of the inseparability of pain and pleasure, forward and backward movement, the importance of paradox, the unity of opposites, these ideas continue to be living reference points for us, not abstractions, but deep anchors and inspirations for our lives all the way through. Roe and I loved playing with ideas. We would delight in creative games, like one of us would have to think of 4 completely unrelated things, and the other person would have to make a story that was interesting and cohesive, uniting those 4 things. And we would do these on long car trips. It was very entertaining for us. We also played with the very difficult ambiguities and challenges of non-monogamy, trying to work with, rather than be torn apart by, the situations we found ourselves in. Delving headlong, or perhaps head last, into urgent experiences of the nature of merger, individuation, possessiveness, connectedness, and intimacy. Our creative dialogues have continued as a steady heartbeat through our lives for these years. In recent times, when Roe would come to New York or I would go to Santa Fe, we would treasure the time that we had together of long breakfasts and slow walks, talking about what we were learning from life, what was most meaningful to us, what we were celebrating as well as what we were challenging. The third thing that I learned was to put enjoyment first, and you've probably gotten this theme already, and anybody that knows Roe has this theme already. To be guided by enjoyment. When we first got together, she asked me to go on a vacation with her to Europe. And I looked at her very naively and I said, well, what is a vacation? What is it for? What do you do that for? She was nonplussed. She sort of sputtered, well, it's fun. And you have experiences and you expand yourself. And I thought, well, those seemed like worthy goals, not the tawdry, ephemeral goal of personal happiness. So I went off with her for 5 weeks to Europe. And she taught me how to revel in things, savor life, bask in color, style, sensation, food and wine, sex, music, nature, community, improvisational play, and humor. The fourth thing I learned was about wholeheartedness and unambiguous, unheld back self-expression. Being all out, bold and free, but always with a light touch. There was always a bit of a tongue-in-cheek quality to Ro's intensity. When we were first together and I tried to tone her down, she chided me and she said, "You're trying to dim my light bulb." and I thought, well, I better not do that. That sounds like a very bad thing to do. Ro loved people and things wholeheartedly. She got on the plane immediately and came to New York a few years ago when I was sick. And I went with her to the Mayo Clinic when she was sick this summer. More recently, I learned a whole different set of things. Being informed by nature, making time and space, apple time as you saw in the slideshow, living a balanced life, making a collage of your life, an art form, with the right balance of things and enough time to really sink into the deep nourishment and enjoyment of your life and your relationships. I think I'm learning that. The last thing that Ro is teaching me is how to die. When I first met Ro, she and I were partners in our protest against death. We spoke like Sartre about living in such a way that death would be an unjust fate. We said, we will not die, our human destiny will have killed us. I think that's a quote from Sartre also. What an amazing 360-degree turn about she took in her development in these last years, as she mindfully cultivated the art of letting go. She came to understand that dying is a part of living, an active, trusting surrender to the unknown. She consciously came to inhabit the cycles of dying and birthing. This is something that I really want to learn from Ro. Perhaps the most important thing that I'll learn in my life from her. So one thing that I haven't said is that Ro and I broke up, but we never lost touch with the family relationship. And when Ro and I were breaking up, which was very dramatic and full of Sturmendrang and full of pain and agony and all kinds of things, Ro expressed with great frustration, "What are we? God only knows what we are to each other." And as a way of lightening that moment, I said, well, God only knows what we are. We're Gakwas. That's what we are. And this became a way of naming a relationship that doesn't have a name. And I'm going to introduce now my partner, and she's going to sing a song about Gakwas, because she and I did workshops all over the place with Gakwa relationships when we got together. Really, we did workshops for therapists and for other people, and there are all kinds of Gakwas in the world, raising children together, having houses together, having all kinds of businesses, all kinds of relationships together that the Gakwa transforms the relationship rather than ending it. So I introduce Ellen Shumsky.
Hi, everybody. I am Ro's Gakwa-in-law. And I had been hearing about Ro for many, many years before I ever met her, because she and Lynn were a legendary couple in the lesbian community in the 70s. I really didn't know what made them legendary, but I kept hearing how legendary they were. I thought maybe it was because they were both therapists. But actually, after hearing Lynn's presentation, I realized it was also because they were role models for an open relationship. So they were very avant-garde. I didn't actually meet Ro until 1987 when I partnered with Lynn. I learned then that Lynn and Ro were Gakwas. They seemed very important to one another. Now, I myself had a Gakwa because I had been in a relationship for about 14 years with somebody, and we too had separated, and so I had a Gakwa, and I had a Gakwa-in-law in addition to Ro. I had two Gakwas-in-law. And they're going to join me in a little while when we sing the Gakwa song. But I have to say that when I did finally meet Ro and with Lynn, she seemed distant and standoffish to me. And I can't say that I was exactly warm and socially at ease with her either. I think we were being cautious with each other. But that changed after a gathering some months later when I sang a song that I had written about Lynn called She Walks in Beauty as the Day. And Ro came up to me after my performance, took my hand in hers, and with literally tears in her eyes, she said, "I wasn't sure how I felt about your relationship with Lynn, but after hearing your song, I know that you deeply get her. It feels very comforting to me. I know she'll be well loved, understood, and cared for. I'm happy you're in her life." And in that moment, we became Gakwas-in-law, and it was the beginning of our family tie, our Gakwa family tie. Ro and Lorraine moved to Santa Fe shortly after this meeting, so I really got to know them better in Santa Fe. Ro was a very warm and welcoming host. We ate up a storm when I visited, both at home and in restaurants, as we were introduced to Southwest culture, which Ro was discovering and passionately embracing. They took us to Indian pueblos, restaurants, musical events, museums, spas, restaurants, marvelous hikes. Ro's enthusiasm for everything was infectious. I can hear that this is a repeated theme in everybody's presentation. As I discovered Santa Fe, I also discovered Ro as a person. She seemed to be a unique synthesis of deep existential philosophical concerns, well-honed, sometimes outrageous, opinions about everything, along with a tendency for sheer silliness and a love of slapstick humor. Over the years, we truly became a Gakwa family. And I wrote my Gakwa song. I was inspired to write the song to capture this important family construct that Ro had identified and named. So now I'm going to introduce my Gakwa, Ethel Rame, and my Gakwa-in-law, Catherine Foster, and they'll join me in the performance of my song, God Only Knows What We Are. I think so. This is a tribute to Roe, who was always interested in living, capturing, and naming nuanced relationships that went beyond the either-or categories of lover, friend, or acquaintance. So we sing this song for Roe. Once we were lovers, true, deep, and strong, sure with each other that we did belong. Our love was a painting, a poem, a sweet song, a magical dance to discover. We laughed and we lived for each other. We knew there could not be another. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other. Sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. Once we were flowers facing the night light. Twined we enjoyed love's perfume, life's delight. Through seasons of change, day passed into night. We grew lonesome and pale on the vine. Time cried and stars ceased to shine. We grew lonesome and lost with no sign. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other. Sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. Once we were savages fighting for life, enduring ravages, suffering strife. Hated and hating, each wielding a knife. We hacked at the ties that bind, groped and struggled as if we were blind, felt as strangers gone out of our minds. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other. Sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. Once we were hosts to the grief of goodbye, haunted by ghosts of eternal love's lie. Still loving each other, we felt something die. We moved on though our hearts filled with pain, to the desert called lonely again, through the borderland onto Hope's plain. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other. Sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. Once we were travelers trying to trust, road bodies rolling uncovered with dust, growing stronger, more daring with every brave thrust. We found new lovers, each of our own, made new paths for us each to walk down, kissed goodbye and moved on to new towns. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other, sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. Now we are finally family, friends, close-knit and chosen and there to the end, forged in the fire of let's just hang in. We are knowing and known through and through, letters carved into stone, me and you, with a love that is tested and true. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other, sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are. God only knows what we are to each other, sister and soulmate, father and mother, companion and friend, once upon a time lover. God only knows what we are.
I so love that song. Captures so much. Well, now we're going to hear from Mide, the love of Ro's life. And she's also going to read to us from some of the other writings of Ro. So, Mide, I've gotten closer to Mide since Ro has died, and she is most wonderful. Gakwa-in-law, the whole world.
Hi. How do I talk about how the love of my life? How do I talk about the love of my life prepared me for her death? Ro was the love of my life. In the last couple of years, in ways I did not know, she was preparing me for her death. We talked about the meaning of life, which obsessed her. Fairly recently, when she was under the effects of anesthesia, she was asked why by the anesthesiologist if she had any questions. She asked what he thought was the meaning of life. She never remembered his answer. No matter, what was most important to Ro was where the questions would take her. She lived with passion and abandon and was unsparingly honest. She yearned to experience every moment fully. She aimed to be a trailblazer, striving to experience different things fully during her life. And ultimately, she was a trailblazer in the way she experienced her death. Her death was a conscious one in that she knew she was dying and chose, in my presence, to let go. She surrendered to her death with the same bravery and honesty with which she lived. Ro would often quote something she once heard, that people die as they lived, and this she did. She delighted in the new and the strange and the unknown, feeling it, also totally embracing it. As Ro's partner of 30 years, I am proud of the way she lived her life and of the way she died. Ro lived an abundant, full, joyful life, a spirit I will cherish and encompass for the remainder of my life. It is this spirit, this rich life that she had, that I wish to celebrate. Now I'm going to read two pieces that she wrote in the last year that I cut down quite a bit. Ro was, if anything, very verbose, if that's the right word. So the first one she wrote after our trip to Italy. Why marry? Go straight to the honeymoon. I was afraid of re-traumatizing Mireille with the awful memories of border crossings. I believed that her facing and trying to master her fear was a great gift to me. The first 2 days were terrible for her, but by the end of 3 weeks, she had triumphed. She studied maps and got us around to unfamiliar places beautifully. We enjoyed each other's company and were extremely compatible at what we wanted to do. By far, the cooking school surpassed my very high expectations. We both absolutely loved it. I just passed my 74th birthday. Between my low immune system, tendency to sudden extreme fatigue, and just plain aging, I was certain I couldn't do a trip like this again. We planned it, took trains and buses, lugged our luggage up and down twisting staircases. For the past 10 years or more, I have not had any overarching goal to accomplish. Rather, I look forward to the flow of days and nights with my beloved partner, dogs, home, friends, work, and Santa Fe. Ending our honeymoon was terribly hard for both of us. For Mireille, border crossing alone was traumatic, but I think she too couldn't bear to part after such togetherness. But separate we did, and this is reflective of our relationship. Close, yes, very, but also following our own independent paths. I must remember I have always taken risks and trips into the unknown, where no one I knew had gone before. I also have always, with utter consistency, no matter what type of experience, brought along intense anxiety. Once I have begun or finished the experience, I nearly always forget I ever had anxiety. It is my kind of courage to do it anyway. But if I think of the rest of my life, I can be sure newness is what I need, what I do, and anticipatory anxiety will be with me. It will be there if I choose something new, or if life or death throws a new thing in my path. I did cut this, but I didn't add any words to it. This is what she wrote. And then this is very close to the last piece she ever wrote. It's called My Mountain Path. Finding my way through strenuous passes and joyous strolls among the peaks. It was my first radiation treatment, lasting 75 minutes. Immobilized and aching, I decided to meditate. I would send a message to breathe in healing, and on the out-breath, exhale and release the cancer from my body. On the in-breath, quite spontaneously, other good things came in without conscious thought. Now, after completing all 4 treatments in a much more ordinary way, I still felt happy, relieved. My high-spirited walk among the wildflowers with views of an expanded world disappeared as I rapidly descended to a narrow path with giant boulders blocking the sun and the way ahead. My lifelong fear of death actually diminished as a stronger fear took over. The fragile structure of my resilience shattered as I groped along the canyon walls of my journey. I was already fatigued and my energy seemed to drop out of my shaky feet as I inched along. This has happened before and is familiar. I've lived in this dark and scary space as an adult about once a decade. There have been other descents, more minor ups and downs. I consider myself lucky that I have been stuck only occasionally in the precipitous mountain pass and a few shafts of gray light barely filtering through the darkness. In fact, I have abundantly more and more walked with ease, beauty, and joy among the roads through the mountain passes. I am now at home, very tired and still upset. At the same time, I need to rest and have taken off work with nothing I have to do. I move from one chaise lounge to another, taking advantage of the lovely day and looking at the blue sky dotted with puffs of white. Mirai just called and is on her way home. I am grateful that I look forward to seeing her with a lifting of my heart, as if we had been together just a few months, not 30 years. Moments such as these penetrate the dark difficulties I am dealing with hard realities. My job now is to know I travel the whole mountain on both roads, and it is all about one path.
Thank you, Mide. And now we're going to hear from Lenny, Rose's brother, and welcome.
Thank you all for being here. I am Rose's brother. Ro lived her life on her own terms. She was passionate about everything. Her ideas, her love, even her cooking. Rose surrounded herself with everything she loved. Mireille, her friends, her Helix group, Santa Fe, her practice, her books. During her life, she developed new theories of psychology and new ways of treating patients, including intensive workshops. She also wrote beautifully about her life and her thoughts, making connections with her past and all around her, as you've just experienced some of her writing. I felt blessed having her as a sister. Even though we were separated by so many miles, we live in DC, she in Santa Fe, and spoke only when the mood moved one of us. Every time we talked, we felt a close connection. We shared not only the same parents, but also a fierce love of learning and discovery, and passions for politics in the large and small sense, food, movies, books, and people. My life was blessed by Ro, and now I feel her loss tremendously. As my older sister, Ro was my role model growing up. When I first went to school, I carried my books across my chest like a girl, rather than by my side, because that's how Ro carried them. When she went to college, she told me what she was reading, Freud, Kafka, and Sartre, and I read them when I was in high school, because I wanted the same intellectual worlds that she was experienced to open up for me. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you two anecdotes that are not written down. One was when she first went to college, she was not much of a high school student. When she first went to college, all these ideas opened to her. And one day she came and she told me, I don't want to read these people anymore. I thought my ideas were original, and here I am finding out that these other people had them, like Socrates. As you know, she loved cooking, and she loved food. This is another story. And this shows her logic. She said, being happy makes you live longer and fuller. Food makes me happy. I am therefore going to eat everything I want to eat as much as I want to eat. I'm never going to diet, and therefore I will live longer because I'll be very happy. That's the logic my sister uses. We love cooking together, although when I asked her for her recipes, Ro would have a hard time telling me exact ingredients or measurements, since she cooked by feel or whim and never did the same dish the same way twice. We shared wonderful experiences in Ro and Mireille's kitchen in Santa Fe. On one of our last times to visit them, they had returned from Italy and taught us how to make pasta dough and little witch hats, a type of pasta, by placing the dough over an opening of a bottle and hitting it hard to push it down and come out with this little brim and a hat. It's lovely. My wife Betty still makes yogurt the way Ro taught her. I remember a week when we visited our parents in Florida. My time with Ro was wonderful. Our mother had Alzheimer's disease, which was getting worse, and my father rarely visited the kitchen. Ro and I cooked a week's worth of dishes for them to freeze and eat whatever they wanted. She shared some of her favorite recipes and I shared mine. Because of our father's very conservative taste, we had to make sure the food was not spicy or had any garlic, which hampered both of our usual dishes. But we had great fun trying to figure out what to do and how to get past my father's taste buds. Our mother was very loving and taught Ro and me how to share our love with others and how to see the best in everyone. Walk a mile in their shoes was a favorite expression of our mother. And Ro certainly took that advice as a psychologist and I as a teacher, and both of us with our mates and friends. Ro loved to share what she loved. Ro and Mireille taught us how to make art with glass. And every day since then, I carry this piece in my pocket that Ro made for me. It's also lovely seeing some of you wearing jewelry that she made. Her last gift was a beautiful belt buckle. We would talk often on the phone about whatever book she was reading, which somehow overlapped with what I was reading. And at the same time, well, she would introduce me to a whole new author or theory. And I would always put a pad of paper next to the phone so that I could write down her suggestions. When we visited, Ro would take us to her favorite walks, and with Mireille, we would go to her favorite restaurants with recommendations of what to try, which was always new and something I'd never eaten. Ro always loved to dance, whether with someone or with herself. She knew how to get the most out of her time and enjoy every minute. Ro was always an innovator, developing new theories of personality and making ways of treating patients, such as developing an entire intense weekend to a specific problem. Our conversations were peppered with new ideas and suggestions about what mystery writers or series watch on TV. I loved her essays about life and how best to live it. She shared her mind and her heart with all she knew. Simple things keep reminding me of Ro. Every time I make coffee, I think of her, since Ro taught me how to grind my own beans in the dimly lit alcove of their home where she and Murray first moved to Santa Fe. I look at my bookshelf and all the books she recommended that I have read or not yet read, and I know that I will be thinking of her when I read or reread them. I will think of Ro when I go for walks, since she loved the outdoors and shared with me the beauty that she saw. And now I see a film or read a book, and I find myself saying, I need to tell Ro about this. She would love it. We shared 71 years of life, and she will continue to be part of me as long as I live. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Maybe we need to take a breath. Sometimes we forget to breathe in these times. Now we're going to hear from Ellen Wingard and Gunilla Norris, and these are members of her very long time Helix group that continued to explore life together for many, many years, from New York to Santa Fe. I don't know which of you wants the microphone. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
It's an honor to be with each of you and to hear our shared and collective experience of Ro, which is so consistently Ro. We used to joke in the Helix group, which I think was spawned as an experiment from her graduate paper on the double helix, of it being a collective inquiry in what she used to call sustainable hedonism. So that begins our journey. And Ellen Wingard, Gunilla Norris, we are here representing Gail Straub, who could not be with us today, and Danit Fried, who is in Japan and could not be with us. We had a tradition in the Helix group from Ro where she would write us a love letter on our birthday. She probably did that with everyone in the room. But we wanted to share the collective and individual voices of our love letter to Ro. So this is from Gail Straub, global activist, fierce friend. I think, again, many of you may know Gail. And she talked about Ro's realms, because we know that she shape-shifted among realms all the time. Ro realm number 1, philosopher of the reconciliation of opposites. Ro, you always felt that if we worked deeply enough with both sides of any dilemma, we could enter into a unified whole. We've heard this now. Something larger and more inexplicable than either side of any opposite. You gravitated like a bee to honey towards this greater whole, thriving in the paradox, happiest when living in between the tensions of opposites. Ro realm number 2, the shaman healer. Whenever I've entered your therapy room, and we experience this gift in the Helix group all the time, I sensed your humility and your genuine love of your work. There was no false hope in this space or a single thought form about fixing anyone. Your shaman's room was a womb that held all facets of the human experience with tenderness, rare presence, and a radical mutuality. Ro realm, the eros of anger. This is Gail's words. These are Gail's words. You and I have almost come to blows on various occasions. Do you remember when we coined the term the eros of anger? We both felt that anger could bring greater intimacy. And we talked about how glad we were that we could get totally pissed off at each other and know that we would mend it. Ro realm the bon vivant. I see you slurping perfect oysters in a small village in Ireland, and Martha's Vineyard, where I live, serving us magenta melon soup on the rooftop of your casita as a purple sunset paints itself over the mountains, and sitting out on Ganila's back porch eating every single teeny-weeny morsel of lobster with a gusto that must be singular in this world. Wherever you are now, Ro, I love you forever. We're going to hear from Gunilla, who will share Dunneat's words.
I can't tell you how much both Dunneat and Gail wanted to be here, so I hope you feel it with us. From Dunneat, there are tears in my matzo balls and tachlik. Will feel a bit hollow and so much more changed. My queen sister, who bravely forged new and unique, courageous pathways, has again forged into new dimensions. My heart aches with the both and of intense joy of having Ro as a seminal part of my life and profound sadness at missing her physical presence. She was and is a vibrant force of life, well lived and loved. I am wrapping the rich tapestry of our long friendship around us both as we forge the new territory of soul connection. I love you, Ro.
I was blessed to have a New Mexico connection. When I first met Ro, she was just moving to New Mexico where I had lived, and the blessing was introducing her to many of my friends who became her friends and are now part of the Gakwa community, my ex-husband included. And I'm so touched to share a memory which came from one of our last times with Ro, and the sadness of a lot of distance that developed because we were not able to be together as often. But we were with her in a very magical place, the Plaza Blanca, which are white stone mountains that look almost like Hindu temple sculptures. And she had done her shaman work, and we were mesmerized. Ro, we went on a journey with you, the evolutionary scout, trustable as always to shake off convention, alerting us to wake up, find new ways to love ourselves and each other and the planet, pay attention to spirit's movement through our animal totems. On that rock, you were our shapeshifter, our channel, our trickster, and yes, sometimes our Amma-like figure, feeding and nurturing us all as only a vision guide with culinary maestro tendencies could. On that day, and in so many cycles of our helix journey, you manifested multi-dimensional Ro, shaman and vulnerable seeker, questioner, encourager, calling us to dismantle stale versions of all old stories, always fiercely alive and on to the next horizon of deep personal and planetary transformation. You seized every taste and flavor. You constructed, deconstructed, disrupted, and conjoined us to live our most vital selves. You expressed your love for Marae as the ultimate healing and blessing of your life, taking the mantle of shaman healer that rippled to all of your clients and sacred friends circle too. At Plaza Blanca, we came out of our visioning journey transfixed by that quiet knowing of your arrival as a real healer. Our belonging was conjoined. We were seen and embraced. This was a deep gift that will endure always. Dearest Ro, your shaman's rattle has now been passed to Tani and the group, just as you were and are a transmitter of truth and consciousness. You are now our evolutionary scout in the great mystery, tender and fierce as always, inviting us, compelling us to evolve. Thank you for your shaman's guidance. We miss you and we love you always.
I wrote a little poem. It's called Tasting. This is for Ro. The little feet of that wise woman were dainty. They never grew up, though she did, wielding the chef's knife and a big ladle of love. She's gone. Grief's arrived, scalding tears, little sleep, the echo cavern inside the ribs, clocks with no faces. But now, holding her photo with both hands, my mouth begins to water. I smell the pungent scent of garlic and oil, and I taste her rich, homemade tomato sauce. And I found myself compelled to write Ro a letter as if she were alive. And still, I was calling her frequently in the last part of her life. My darling Ro, I'm speaking to you as if you were here, and in fact you are here in my heart and in all our hearts. Dear Ro, you gave so much of yourself. Love, thoughtfulness, sometimes worry that you couldn't help, humor, wisdom, not to speak of the gustatory extravagances we have all partaken of. I thank you for your soulful being, for the gift of your vocation and dedication to help others, for your deep inquiry into life, and for always wanting to grow in consciousness. Most of all, I thank you for being my deep friend all these many years. You will always be alive to me. I bless you, and I bet you are cooking up something wonderful wherever you now are.
You really get a sense of that group. Makes me wish that I had been a part of it. And now we're going to hear from Jende, Ro and Mire's godchild. Is she here? Yes, she is. She's been helping us with the technology and with everything. Thank you, Jende.
Hello, everyone. So, I don't have anything written or really prepared, but Ro and Mir have known me since before I can remember, and I remember there's a photo of when Ro was trying to feed me when I was a baby, and she missed and tried to put it in my nose, and sorry, I just can't even believe that she's gone. But Ro and Mire both helped me grow up and made me who I am today. And they've always... Sorry, I just really need a tissue. They've always loved me unconditionally, and have always been at all of my school performances, and have really been the extended family that I never had in Santa Fe. And I remember when I was little, Ro, I really liked horses a lot, and I made up these two horses that were best friends named Blackie and Brownie. And Ro helped me write a whole book and helped me put it together. And she just invested so much time into that, making this book with me and like drawing the pictures with me and just being like one of my best friends when I was younger. Sorry, I am just having a hard time here. But that meant so much to me, especially thinking back on an adult woman sitting down with a child and spending so much time. Every other Tuesday I would go there for dinner with my mom. And they just played such a big role in my life, and Mireille still does. And I'm happy you can see me as an adult now. And I wish Ro could too. But yeah, I mean, we're all here because she's just such an amazing person. She's one of those people where it's hard to believe she's gone because she's just so full of life. Even the last time I saw her, before I went back to school, she was lying down and couldn't really get up because she felt so sick. But even her talking, she was still so present with me, and she's one of those people who is always so present and always there for the other person. That she always gave everyone her energy, and yeah, she's just amazing. So that's what I have to say.
Ro would love to hear Jinde saying those words, and maybe she is hearing them. We have a little slideshow of pictures of Ro. After that, we're going to hear from Lucy Slursberg and Robert Axel, and then any of you who want to speak. So first we'll watch this little slideshow, and then we'll have some more sharing.
Look at that face, just look at it. Look at that fabulous face of yours. I knew first look I took at it, this was a face that the world adores. Look at those eyes, as wise and as deep as the sea. Look at that nose, it shows what a nose should be. As for your smile, it's lyrical, friendly and warm as a summer's day. That face is just a miracle. How could I ever find words to say the way that it makes me happy? Whatever the time or place, I'll find in no book what I find when I look at that face. Look at that fabulous face. I know should be. As for your smile, it's lyrical, friendly, and warm as a summer's day. That face is just a miracle. How could I ever find words to say the way that it makes me happy? Whatever the time or place, I'll find in no book what I find when I look at that face. I'll find in no book what I find when I look at that face. Look at that face of yours. That face of yours. The face of yours. That fabulous
And Robert Axel, who was a part of our initial group and a very close, warm friend of Rose.
I'm Robert Axel. I see Renee across the room, and I haven't had much time to share with you in the time that over the years, but I feel you very, very closely through all the energy that's in this room and through Ro. Ro and I were born a few days apart in May. Our Geminis filled the room with personality, or more precisely, multiple personalities. Dramatic and enthusiastic, sensitive and tumultuous personalities. Ro always said that if she were to be born a man, she would be me. And Ro would be my female counterpart. It was all about spirit, love of life, moodiness, sensitivity, sensuality, and strength. We identified with each other. I am inspired by Ro and honored that she considered me to reflect anything about her. To the woman who would be me, from the man who would be Ro. In the early 70s, I first met Lynn Preston at NYU when we became very close, very fast, and soon after I met Ro, and they both met Robin, my wife of 48 years. Those were the 70s, when our lifestyle experimentations were the grist of our intimacy challenges. We, our group of travelers, were passionate about our connections to our love commitments, as well as to our experimentation in individuation. Compassionate, loving souls, we were rooted in creativity and emotional genuineness, and hard work and capturing that playful child in the young adult bodies we inhabited. We were caring, empathic, and alive. And we vibrantly embraced our professional lives and creativity. Many of us were our psychotherapists, and we created peer groups to support each other as we pushed the limits of established traditional psychotherapy to more experiential modes of allowing the person to emerge in his or her unique manner. Our groups stepped from the heels of the me generation into the we of the women's movement, when women fought for more for themselves and expected more of the men in their lives. I was seen as less male chauvinist than others, so Lynn and Rowe and other feminist therapists would refer the male lovers and friends of their clients to me. And if I developed my specialty in men's issues. We created the Center for Experiential Psychotherapy at St. Stephen's Church on the Upper West Side, where we held sensitivity training groups, Gestalt, women's groups, men's groups, groups in creativity, and we spent weekends in the mountains on retreats. When I was entrenched in my PhD work, Rowe was saddened that my light went out. My verve and enthusiasm dimmed as I dredged through those muddy and threatening waters. And when I finally got my doctorate, Lynn and Rowe celebrated by taking Robin and I to the Golden Pheasant Inn in New Hope for an unforgettable weekend on the Delaware. Later, Robin and I were struggling with infertility, and those were the days before in vitro and all of the latest processes. And we were sitting around the dinner table with Lynn and Rowe began some aura work around us, through us, between us. She wove a palette of unseen colors of energy, and she must have done something because we got pregnant very soon thereafter. Life evolved, and Mireille became Rowe's life partner, and Ellen and Lynn began. Rowe moved to Santa Fe, a bold move of courage. I regret that I never visited. It was just about a year ago when we reconnected after many years to celebrate her 75th birthday at an intimate small dinner. We shared an exquisite walk and talk uptown, followed by consistent emails and plans to share our mutual writing projects with each other. The following is a poem I wrote to Lynn after Rowe passed about how difficult it was for me to even start the grieving process. Waves breaking against behind my eyes. The depths of grief yet to press open wide the lids now closed to tears. The sobriety of daylight and the burn of black coffee, bitter, drown the swelling in my throat. Failed attempts to disaffirm the reality of now. Blossoms of you, Lynn, burst forth in your adventurous young woman in mind, body, and passionate connection with our dear Rowe. Your bond is forever across dimensions and beyond tangible touch. Mine, spirits linked in palpable heartbeats and broad smiles, eyes lit with elan vital. Dear Rowe, we are connected by a life force as thick and juicy as lush mangoes. Now, this is a poem I sent to Rowe after she described her first treatments with radiation. Dear Rowe, your words spread like sunrise, illuminating morning shadows, and gracefully envelop space like deer darting from the dark woods. There, starkly revealed on my open lawn, their vulnerable sensitivity is revealed in darting eyes, tilting heads, and turning necks. The geese sense alterations in temperature. Air currents wisp against their feathers and voicelessly urge their migration in the insistence of the season. The curiosity of autumn's urging, her questioning invitation to swirl in the ballet of leaves, to gather the harvest in sacred envelopes of life-filled flesh. The curiosity of this autumn. Your autumn birds reveal your challenges in the coming winter winds. You are hiking trails up mountain slopes, breaching bits of sunlight, while your skin flushes in the rad rushes of meditative machines, muttering, murmuring, missing, musing, misting, mounting, meandering, mouthing mouthfuls of air, gasping, grasping breath, gratefulness. You are the curiosity of order, crisply attuned with the present. Your brilliant smile, your loving eyes, and your soft touch unfold across the desert, the plains, through cornfields, and big cities, lakes and rivers, merging, meeting, meditating to me, health, rad gratefulness. Thank you.
We invite anyone who would like to share spontaneously now to come and just introduce yourself, take the microphone. We are running a bit late, so we have about 20 minutes for this process. So anybody who would like to say a few words, please come up. You don't even have to know what you want to say. You're welcome to see what comes as you take the mic. Well, maybe we should have Ro have the last word. We have a little video of that I took. I have this habit of videoing everything. Occasionally, it's been really important to have those videos, and I videoed Ro last April when she was visiting for her 75th birthday, and asked her about her wishes for her birthday, and we have her reply on this little clip, and Mireille and I have been watching it, and Patty too, I suppose, again and again to hear what Ro had to say then. Rowie, what would you like for this year of being 75? What are your wishes?
Well, I am very happy right now with the way my life is. Everything seems to be in a good balance, and I have everything I really, really want. And plus, one thing I've wanted is a hot tub, and I ordered it and paid for most of it. So that is one change. But other than that, I would love to have things stay the same. I know they won't, but I would love that, because I'm at a place in cycles where you want things, you work for things, and they happen, and I just want to enjoy it for a while without changing it.
So what are the things that you don't want to change?
My relationships with my friends, with Mireille, with my 2 dogs, with nature, and with my work, and the relationships within my work. And I have the right, for me now, the right structure of group activity and individual friendships, a lot of alone time, a lot of time just with Mireille or individual friends, and art, time for art, time to write and reflect on my life. And I'm just extremely happy with the way things are. So I walk almost every day for 2 miles in a beautiful location where I see the mountains, and I'm just enjoying the walk. It's not a have to, it's something I really want to do. And I would love to have my life stay the way it is.
Okay,
Very
from
unusual for me.
from your mouth to God's ears.
I hope, may it be so.
May it be
With
so.
the goddess.
With the goddess. This is a song that I used to love, and Ro would say, "Oh, I hate that because it's a save a wretch like me. I'm not a wretch." And so Ellen and I used to tease Ro by singing "To Save a Wretch Like Ro." Sometimes we would just do it automatically at different events, and we wouldn't recognize that we were saying "To Save a Wretch Like Ro." But then Mireille says that Ro changed, this new Ro liked this song, really liked it, and Mireille said that she would like to have us sing it. So we're not going to sing To Save a Wretch Like Ro, we're going to sing To Save a Soul Like Me. Right, Patty? That sound like a good idea? And we have the Judy Collins version of this song. Sing along. And we'll meet you upstairs. And don't forget to leave your comments in the book and your email addresses. And enjoy the food and the wine, and also the pictures that Patty has so lovingly put together. And if you brought pictures, you can put them up there too. We'll see you in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.